Okay, just now we have seen an example of definite loop that we can take a couple of numbers and then sum them together and then produce the average, right? So now we move on and see another example that we do kind of the similar functionality but with a indefinite loop. So well, before I show you and talk to you about the code, let's see how this program works. Okay, so the first thing is, well, we ask the student more numbers to average, yes or no. If the user is yes, and then we give a prompt, say enter a number. And after that, we ask again, do you have more number to average? So for after each round or before each round, we just ask this question, do you have another number to give me? And the user will give us yes or no. If the user says yes, and then I move on and give a prompt, say, okay, now you said yes, so give me a number. Otherwise, if the user says a no here, and then we just say, okay, you have tabbed me X numbers. And then I just add them together and then give you the average. Okay, so why is this example a indefinite loop? Because we don't ask the user how many numbers are there beforehand, right? So we just ask for a number and then ask the user, do you have more numbers? And then we ask for another number and then we ask the user the question again, do you have more numbers, yes or no? And then as long as the user says yes, I'm gonna ask for more numbers, and then if the user gives me a no, this means that's it, and then I want to produce the average. Okay, so how do I do this part of the code? So before the iteration, I have to start two variables. One is the total, that is the total, the sum of the numbers that the user has already typed. And then I also have to keep track of the n, that is how many numbers the user has already given to me. Okay, and then well, I started here asking the first question, do you have more numbers? And then if the user give me a yes, and then well, or I say as long as I got a yes, and then I'm going to receive a number from the user. I add the number to the total, and remember I have to increase the n by 1 because n is the counter counting how many numbers I have already received from the user, right? So I add the number to the total and then I increase the n by 1. And after that, I ask the user this question again. Do you have more numbers to give me? Yes or no? And I come back here. As long as the more data is a yes, which means the user is going to give me another number, and then I'm going to start the iteration again. I ask for the number, I add the number to the total, and then I increase the n by 1, and eventually I want to ask the user, do you have more numbers to give me? Well, and if the user's answer is no longer yes, and what do? I do the total divided by n, and that is the average, and then I print the average. Well, and even though you don't want to see a lot about the code, just by looking on the prompts on how this program interacts with the user, and you can tell the difference. For this one, well, after each round, I ask the same question to make sure the user is giving me one more number. And so I don't have control on how many numbers the user gives me. Well, the user may only give me one, or the user may give me 50. I don't know that. But as long as the user says yes, I'm gonna grab another number from the user, and then whenever the user says no, I'm ready to give the average. Okay? Well, and another question. Well, just now we say for the for loop, we usually use that for definite loops. And for while, we usually use that for indefinite loops, right? So the next question is, if we have a definite loop, can we do that with while? And the answer is definitely yes. And we have already done this before. Like for example, if we want to visit all the letters one by one in this string, well, even before we do the iteration, we know the length of the string. So we know how many rounds we are going to run, right? So in this case, it is definitely a indefinite loop. Well, can you do that with a while? Yes, we can, and we have already done this, right? So we started I as a 0, and I will be used as an index, and then we say as long as the I is smaller than the length of the string, and we just print the current character with x square bracket I, and then we increase the I by 1. So the answer to this question, can we do a definite loop with a while? The answer is yes, no problem. And then let's ask another question. How about we do a indefinite loop with a for? Well, this question is really a little bit complicated. And if you want to search on Google, and you may find different answers, and you may find people use some of the examples to show it is also doable to use a for loop to handle a indefinite loop. Well, but this is my argument. This is my personal argument. Okay, so a for loop, it's gonna visit a known set or known sequence of items. It could be a sequence of numbers in a range, or it could be a sequence of characters in a string. But anyhow, well, we use for loop to visit a sequence of the items one by one. So before we start the iteration, we know the sequence we are visiting, right? So in this way, well, usually I would argue the for loop should be used for definite loops only. Well, I can't say there are for loop cannot handle indefinite loops, but I would say there's no reason that you have to use a for loop to handle a indefinite loop. Okay, this is my argument. And the next thing, well, break statement. Well, when we are doing the iterations and there are axes, right? So when do we finish an iteration, for example? And in a for loop, that will happen when we finish visiting all the items in the sequence one by one, no matter if it is a range or if it is a string. So this is how we finish a for loop. And how do we finish a while loop? We finish a while loop when the condition, while some condition, when this condition turns from true to false, and then we finish this iteration. So for both for loop and while loop, there are already the built-in ways to finish the iteration. But for the break, it adds another hasty exit to the iteration. Okay, so especially if you want to add more axes of your iteration, and then break statement is the right way to go. And well, for the break, it works both in the for loop and in the while loop. Okay, so let me show you an example. Well, for letter in Python. So we are visiting the string Python, one character by another character. And then we have the if statement. And if the current letter I'm visiting is an H, and then I just do a break. Because, say, for some weird reason, I really don't like the letter H, and then I just break. And by doing a break, I mean, even though I know I haven't finished all the items in the for loop yet, but as long as I see an H, and then I'm gonna stop running the whole iteration, not just the current run. I'm stopping running the whole iteration. Okay, and well, if this if condition is not true, so nothing is gonna happen, and then I'm gonna print current letter colon letter, and then I'm gonna tell you what letter I'm visiting, and eventually at the else I will print the loop is finished. Okay, so well, if we want to run this program in your mind, and then the first letter is P, and for the P it is not H, so break is not triggered, and then we print P. And the next thing, Y is not H, so break is not triggered yet, we print Y. And then T is not H, so we print T. And then for the H, and then letter equals H is a true, so we do a break. So are we gonna print H? The answer is no, because printing H will happen here, but even before we get here, it is already a break statement. So for this statement, printing H will be skipped. Okay, so we are going to print P, Y, T, and that's it. Well, and you may ask, how about the else? And the answer is, for the else, it will only be triggered when we finish everything, we finish all the possible iterations normally. But if we have a break and then we trigger that break to finish this iteration, and then the else will also be skipped. Okay, so we are going to print P, Y, T, but we won't see this line because that will be skipped. The reason is a break statement is triggered. Okay, so we will only see those 3 lines. Okay, let's see another example. Well, we can also do a break with a while loop. Well, and the example is we create a variable, and that is 10, and as long as this value is greater than 0, and then we check one thing. We check if the value is 5, we do a break. This means for some reason 5 is a value I don't like, and then I do an otherwise. If this doesn't happen, and I will do the current value is this value, and then I decrease the current value by 1. So I start from 10, and then as long as the variable is still greater than 0, and then I check if it is 5. If it is 5, I'm going to do a break. I'm going to stop the whole iteration. Otherwise, I'm going to print the current value and then decrease the value by 1. So we started from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and when we get down to 5, so 5 greater than 0, that's a true, so no problem. Well, and here, for the value equals 5, that's a true, and then we do a break. So when we have this break, we are going to stop the entire iteration, and including the else part. So we are going to jump out of the while loop, and then we also skip the else part. So that's the reason we say, well, we are going to stop here, and if the break is triggered, and then we just exit the entire loop. Okay, well, and another thing I want to remind you is, well, for this program, there are 2 axes. The axis 1 is if the value is no longer greater than 0, we are going to stop. And another exit is if the value is 5, and then we are going to stop. So we are adding extra axes to your iteration. And sometimes when you are iterating through something complicated, and then you have to stop when you see something. For example, when you see an invalid input, and then you're going to stop. So, or there are multiple invalid values you're looking for. As long as you see one of them, you're going to stop. And in this way, you may have to use multiple axes, and it is quite common. So a break statement is the way to go if you want to add more axes to your program in your iterations. Okay, so I believe this video is long enough, and I will see you in the next one.